Hi guys, and welcome back to Bad Hair Adventures. I had a video planned for today, but because the sun's out, it makes filming in the garden a bit difficult because I'm in a terrace. There'll be a lot of extraneous noise, so I've decided to do another quick, different video, and I'll endeavour to wake up silly early in the morning tomorrow and film the one I wanted to film for today. So it's just a quick look at my first gear. What I had first when I first started doing wild camping. I mean, before I was doing it, we just called it camping. But this was like the first time that I kind of slept in the open, not in a tent. I would carry, this was my first rucksack, etc. So without further ado, let's get into it, okay? So as you can see, my first rucksack was a Bergen. It's super heavy, but it's seriously tough, and you can fit everything and the kitchen sink in it. I mean, I've had it for years. I bought it, I think it was described as A1. The big pouches I had to replace because when they came there was holes and where it had obviously been crushed flat from storage, etc. But this was actually used in the field. It does have a guy's name on it on the back. Like I say, I've had it for years. It fits everything in it. So let's get to the kit that I used to put in my first rucksack. Okay guys, let's get into my Bergen and see what it is and what we're all about. So I'm going to start with the pockets. These are two 10-litre pockets, and in them I would keep, what we got first? This is a little first aid kit that I made myself, a little backy tin. I'd always take some form of first aid. I believe one of the first things I ever bought was 50 metres of paracord. I've still got some of it actually. It was blue. Terrible. But necessary for the type of shelter that I had, which we'll get into shortly. I had a head torch. This isn't it, because head torches die, and I've had about 4 since then. But this is just to represent that I bought a head torch. So, what else we got? This was my first shelter, I suppose you could say, although it was only part of my shelter setup. This is a cheap as chips high gear bivvy bag. It isn't very good, doesn't breathe very well, so you end up completely soaked. Well, your sleeping bag ends up completely soaked. It's bog standard olive drab kind of affair. There's no zips to it. It is one of the, basic of basic, climb into it, high gear bivvy bags. Comes in a little stuff sack. I think it was about £12. I think I bought it from Go Outdoors. I needed something potentially that would keep me waterproof. I didn't really know anything at the time, and I didn't have a lot of money at the time either. So I just, someone said to me, oh, you should get a bivvy bag. I got a bivvy bag. I might well use it again at some point soon. Probably in the summer when I don't need to use a, well, if we're allowed out by then of course. So I'll use like a wool blanket with it or something. See if that helps. So that was my first 10-litre pouch. Then we'll go to the middle pouch. So this is my Pathfinder nest set. It's a litre bottle and mug that is, well, it says 25 ounces or 700 millilitres, but you can probably get a bit more in there, probably more like 750. It was one of the first things I actually purchased because I didn't have, as you can see from all the colouring, I cook with it. I still use it today, I still take it everywhere with me. I've never had it fail on me. I do have the fish mouth spreader, so I can hang it. I used to hang it above the fire. It's pretty much the only way I ever used to cook. So yeah, I bought that. That was my cook set water carrier, if you will. Let's move on to the other side. There's more kind of gear related things in here. This was my first water bottle. It is a, what they call it, Pattern 58. Black plastic. Again, I still take it with me today, full of water. It's a water bottle, what can I say about it? Onwards. Okay. This is something I made. I didn't make the pouch, but I put it together, is what I mean. These are, I think they're Yugoslavian, I forget the type of, they're an ammo pouch basically. They're good, thick, tough leather, belt hoops, dangler, and I turned it into like a fire making kit. The thing you'll notice that's missing from this setup that I started with is I didn't have a stove. Mainly because I would just make a fire and then I would cook on the fire. This has multiple things into, which we will get into later. All very good for starting a fire, getting a fire going, etc. So we'll get into the fire kit a bit later. So that was my fire kit. The idea was that most of this stuff would go on my belt when I was actually in the woods. So the fire kit. So this is part of the fire kit. It's I don't know if it's a bit rusted closed now because I don't use it. Yeah, there we go. It is a metal tin hole in the top for making char cloth, which I have here, which I think is probably a bit thin for the job. It was basically more fire lighting things, stormproof matches, an actual matchbook, sewing kit. I don't know how that made in there. Water purifying tablets, there's some fat wood in there. So yeah, it was like a backup fire kit if I needed to char some cloth or I needed something else, something extra to help me get the fire going. So that's that. If I'm honest, I don't carry any of this really anymore. What's next? So this was my original cook set. Said I didn't have a stove. That's not quite true. I did have a stove, I just never used it. So this is a bog standard mess kit. Mess tins, mess kit. With the two of them. I pretty much only ever used the big one. And even then I didn't really use it. I found it, it's a bit of a kind of a cheap aluminium. It was quite difficult to clean. And as soon as you started scratching it in any way, shape or form, it was pretty much ruined, and you can see there's all sorts of scratches inside. So I got those, they were £4, and even though I said I didn't have a stove, I did have a stove. I had this original military BCB stove, or BCB Dragon I think they call it now, but I never used it. Like I say, I was more interested in being able to make fire from the materials that I could find in the woods. So I didn't really ever use this. But along with my mess kits, I got bought a gift very soon after wanting to do this. And it is pretty much the cheap military multi-tool food can opener type thing. So you get a stout knife, but it doesn't lock. I think it locked maybe 2 or 3 times before that broke. It has a bottle opener and it has a knife and fork. Sorry, a fork and spoon attachment, if I can get them out. Okay. So you would get a spoon attachment and it would slot in for you to eat with. And you had a fork that side. Yeah, I used it. Like I say, the knife broke really early on. So I never really, it looks like where the locking mechanism comes down, it looks like the metal broke on it. So I never really used it for any length of time. I did used to take it with me though, because it was always handy to have every utensil. yeah, that was part of that's my my cook kit in effect. Cheap old military style aluminium mess tins. What else have we got? Okay, and then the two tools I would take with me would be my knife and my folding saw. Now my knife has a ferro rod in it. Again, I was very much, I know it sounds a bit kind of sad, but I was very much into learning bushcraft and learning skills that would enable me to survive in the wild, I guess. They were the two tools. That's what I would always take with me, would be a saw and my knife. So it didn't matter that the knife on my mess kit broke, because I would just use this one. Yeah, still clean, still sharp. I must have had that 10 years now. So those, yeah, that is the gear that I would put in my pockets. It was shelter. I suppose the paracord's probably going to go in the shelter as well. But it was more camp kitchen, camp survival. So let's get into my fire kit. So this is my fire kit. This is one of the first things I started to make, and by make I mean put together. So inside my fire kit, I'll just get these bits out. So my first pocket, I had a very basic magnesium block and striker. You can see I was not very good at using the striker, as it's worn down in the middle. The magnesium is pretty good, although it's a arduous way of making a fire. It'll always work. And then like I say, I made this and put it on because the initial string broke. So I had a magnesium block and striker with ferro rod. I then also had a V3 pocket bellows. This is probably the best tool I own. I love it. It's so, life becomes so much easier when you buy one of these. So it's basically, in effect, an old school car aerial. One thin end, one fat end. Put the thin end in the fire and blow. Don't suck, blow. It enables you to, in the morning, instead of having to make a whole new fire, you tend to be able to just sift through in the ashes, find a coal, add it, scrape it out and add it to some dry kindling, and then just use this and you have fire in seconds. So good. And then obviously there's my Opinel 9, which is my spare knife. So then on the other side, I added, this obviously changed from them. There is a citronella candle, because bugs are rubbish. There's a couple of sticks of fatwood. They smell like leather now, sadly. They've lost that pine smell. And a cheap little Victorinox signalling mirror. I suppose you could use it to make fire with, or you could just use it to signal people from above. I don't know. I was obsessed with survival at this point. So that is my fire kit. Okay, so now we've been through what was in my pockets, i.e. it was in effect everything apart from my shelter. So let's get into the bag. This is the 70. I think the 70 plus, I'm not sure. I know it's massive. But I was using heavy gear and there was a lot of it. So my shelter would be the bivvy bag, but I would make a V-shaped kind of shelter with these. It is a military poncho. I have two of them. I forget where the other one went. So they click together with the clips that run down the side. Oh, hello dog. That's it, show your bum to the camera. That's it, show your bum to the camera. What are you doing? Really? Ooh, good girl. Good girl. He's a good girl. So as I say, I would clip two edges together. I would lay one out, would be my ground sheet, and then the other I would angle over me. I would sometimes put two ridge lines in so I could put a crook in the angle. So it would come up and then across. Here are some pictures of setups I've done with it. So yes, I would have two of these. That was my shelter. I would set that up. I would lay my mat and my bivy bag inside that. Wasn't light. Was not small. Yeah, when you get two of these things together, they become pretty heavy. But super waterproof. You just had to make sure your join was at like ground level. So they would have, not only would it clip together, they'd have big eyelets, so I would just peg the eyelets out and then I would figure out how and what angle I needed it to be at. Which is why the paracord from earlier. I mean, this still has a, these are from 1997. Still has an information sticker. It's very badly worn though. So that was my shelter, would be two. Obviously, I would pack one and I would wear one. It being in the UK, it rains all the time. So whichever one I wore would be the angled edge of my shelter. That and my bivy bag would be my shelter. So now we're getting into like sleep gear. Pretty certain that's all that's in here. My still using my Snugpak Chrysalis 4. It's the first sleeping bag I'd ever bought. Beforehand they were, you know, when you're young and kids and that, it's begged, borrowed. You borrow your parents or... But that was... I mean, it wasn't cheap at the time. But seeing as I've been using it for about 7 years and I still use it now and never get cold. I mean, its extreme comfort is minus 15. I mean, it's big. It does, random peg there. It does pack down well, if you can be bothered to crush it in. So that would be my sleeping bag. And then my sleep mat is a generic, I think it was, I don't remember if it was millets or blacks or millets, you know, they keep buying each other out. But it was their own brand multi-mat. It's a 2.5 centimetre, 3 centimetre thick self-inflating mat. So you would just lay it down, open the valve, and just before getting into bed, put a couple of breaths into it, cap it off. I never got cold. It's not massively comfortable, but it's not terrible. And that, I'm afraid to say, is about as exciting as it got for the gear I would use. None of it was massively expensive. I suppose the sleeping bag was probably the most expensive thing. Yeah. And I didn't want to scrimp on it. I thought, I'm an advocate of, you don't have to spend a lot of money on gear. Some gear you should buy quality. I think your sleeping bag is probably one of them. You know, you don't have to spend the earth to get quality. You just have to be able to carry the weight. So that was it. That was my first rucksack. Oh, wondering why there's no pillow. I would use a 12 litre dry bag. I'd put my clothes in it and I would trap some air in it, and that would be my pillow. Just like that. And this was my first wild camping setup. This is it. This is all you really need to get out into the woods, and that and a little bit of knowledge, 1 or 2 real basic knots, kind of an idea of how to build a fire, which you can look at in one of my previous videos, and I'll put a link in the description for that one. And that's it, guys. That's all you really need. It's all real simple. I mean, none of this is light, none of this is compact in any way, shape or form. I don't tend to use the Bergen anymore. I might do if we're going to the woods and I want to take lots of tools and I'm taking stuff for the dog. I might use it. But otherwise, the only real things that I still use are the sleeping bag and the mug nesting set and my knife and saw. That's it. Everything else, I mean, I've got a different first aid kit. I've got a different mess kit. Probably still use the paracord and the head torch. Otherwise, all of this all sits in my gear cupboard, or as we like to call it, the spare bedroom. So thanks for watching, guys, and for joining me on this. I know it wasn't exactly great. It's not exactly what I had planned. Hopefully I'll get to do that tomorrow. That'll be way more interesting. It'll be a little bit of a competition, and not for you guys, as in an experimental competition. And yeah, thanks for watching. Like, share and subscribe. I want to say thank you to the new subscribers we got. I've had a couple more overnight. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Do get in the comments, let me know what you think. Obviously this is a retrospective. This is the history of my first kind of regular setup, if you will. I don't even know, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's under 20 pieces of kit, which is pretty good. Obviously watching lots of Romeo and the Survivor Man paid off. So if you've got any questions about any of it, get in the comments, and we'll see you on the next one, guys. Bye for now.